waiting to see if the government is going to, do something retroactive on this particular credit. But I can tell you this. Initially, when they proposed the credit, some of us was assuming that they was gonna run it back to the credit they had in 2021, which a lot of you was waiting out because you was thinking you was about to get a lot of money for the child tax credit. But what they have proposed to Congress, it ain't that. You waiting for nothing. I ain't gonna say you waiting for nothing, but you shouldn't even wait, because they're not going to make it a refundable credit like they did in a full refundable credit like they did in 2021. It looks like it's possibly still going to be up to $2,000, and so right now it's up to $2,000, with $1,600 of those $2,000 possibly being refundable, and then the other $400 is non-refundable. But understand this with the child tax credit. Just because it says up to $2,000, so that doesn't mean that every person is going to get $2,000 for their dependent. Okay, that's not necessarily how it works. You're not gonna get $2,000 for every dependent. Depends on what your income level is and what your tax liability is. But not only that, what a lot of people don't know is, again, it's a non-refundable credit. So it depends, again, on your tax liability. And then if you meet a certain criteria in your tax liability, or your tax liability is reduced, then it could turn into the additional child tax credit, which becomes the refundable portion. But it's a lot of scenarios in there. So a lot of you think when you come file your taxes, you just automatically think like, okay, the child tax credit is $2,000, so I know I'm about to get $2,000 for each one of my dependents. So you just think automatically you're going to get $6,000. And that's not how it works. So it has to be, it's up to $2,000. It's also determined by, again, what your tax liability is. So, for example, a lot of you all are not having taxes withheld. So you think that you're not getting the child tax credit when you really are. Like, you're getting the credit because that's what it's called, a credit. You're getting the credit for that particular dependent. But if you have a tax liability, they take that credit back and apply it to your tax liability. So that's why you possibly don't see those dollars in your pocket, because it depends on whether you had a tax liability or not. And when you're making, I want to say like 30 plus, and you didn't have any taxes withheld, and you got dependents on your taxes, well, what ended up happening is the child tax credit, you get it, but it's eating up the money that you would have had to pay the IRS. So, again, it's up to $2,000. It depends on whether or not, again, what your tax liability is. The qualifications for it is your dependent has to be under 17. So that means that they've turned 17 in the tax year, which is, this tax year is 2023, then you no longer qualify for the child tax credit. And that confuses you all, because a lot of you still qualify for earned income tax credit. And then you be thinking you don't need to claim your 17-year-old or 18-year-old. But you really should, because you might get earned income tax credit for them. So it's just a lot of confusion around that particular credit. Now, when they're over the age of 17, they don't get this child tax credit, but you possibly can get like the other dependent care credit, and that is like up to $500, but that's fully non-refundable. So what ends up happening with that is if you have a tax liability, it reduces your tax liability up to $500. And then if you actually paid some taxes, had some taxes withheld, then again, it reduces your tax liability. So it depends on how much you paid. Then it might put $500 of the money that you paid in your pocket. That's how that works. Now you have the child and dependent care credit, okay, which is child care, the child care credit. So